Welcome, everybody, to the webinar on EPIIC, Enabling Partnerships to Increase Innovation Capacity. And let me just do quick introductions, and I'm going to hand it over to Erwin Gianchandani. Sorry, Erwin. I mangled that.
Okay.
I'm Geoffrey Brown. I'm a program officer in the Technology Innovation Partnerships Directorate and one of the program directors on EPIIC. I'm also a university professor at Indiana University in computer science. Becky, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Happy to be with you today to talk about EPIIC. I am also one of the program officers in the TIP Directorate, part of EPIIC, and a few other programs. Looking forward to the webinar today. And I guess I'll hand it off to Korie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Korie. I am a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow that works with engines and as well as EPIIC. And so excited to see all the participants in the room and for us to get our webinar started today. And then I will go ahead and have Erwin introduce himself.
Sounds great. Thanks, Korie. Thanks, Geoffrey. Thanks, Becky. And good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you might be exactly today. It's great to be with all of you. I'm Erwin Gianchandani, and I serve as the Assistant Director for Technology Innovation and Partnerships. So I lead the TIP Directorate here at the National Science Foundation. And we're delighted to have quite a few folks joining us this afternoon for this webinar on EPIIC expanding partnerships to increase innovation capacity. We love our acronyms in Washington and at NSF, and this is, I think, a prime example of that. Anyways, I think what I wanted to just do is provide a little bit of framing for this program, which we think is, I mean, it's a really important program to us at the National Science Foundation, and specifically in the Technology Innovation and Partnerships, or TIP Directorate as well. As some of you may know, but perhaps not all of you, a couple of years ago, the National Science Foundation established a new unit. We call our units directorates for the most part, a new unit called Technology Innovation and Partnerships. And it was actually authorized by an act of Congress just a few months later in the CHIPS and Science Act of 2022. The goal of this unit in many ways is to try to help accelerate technology development and technology to impact in the context of pressing societal, national, regional, geostrategic challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis. And another key part of the mission for this directorate is, in order to be able to accomplish everything that I just said, really engage and harness the full geography and the full demography of innovation that exists all across this country. How do we engage diverse institution types? How do we engage folks from all different backgrounds and all different geographic locations? Really, in many ways, going beyond perhaps what NSF, the community that NSF has perhaps historically served or served particularly well over the last many years and decades of NSF's existence. And so, as you're going to hear from Becky and Geoffrey and Korie in just a little bit, our goal with the EPIIC program in particular is to really try to broaden the participation in innovation and entrepreneurship and translation. How do we accelerate to impact breakthrough technologies like AI and quantum and biotechnology and so forth, while also addressing some of those pressing national, societal, geostrategic challenges that I talked about? Our worldview on this, and some of you are pretty familiar at this point with the NSF Regional Innovation Engines program, the NSF Engines program that we also launched a couple of years ago, is that we really want to try to catalyze bringing together different organization types and different sectors to build the coalitions that I think are necessary to be able to have the ability to tackle some of the use-inspired and some of the translational research, as well as the workforce development, the development of a skilled technical workforce as well within a particular region. I always describe that the Engines program, and its goal ultimately is to try to help a particular region and its coalition of leadership really put that region on the map as a national and perhaps even a global leader in a particular topic area of interest to that region where there's already some expertise and some engagement. And so for us, when we think about who all forms that coalition, it's really important that that includes everyone in that particular region, all of the diverse organization types, including minority serving institutions, including predominantly undergraduate institutions, including two-year institutions, that Again, as I said earlier, we have underinvested in historically, but where there's opportunity for us to provide additional investment to help grow the infrastructure, help grow the resources that are necessary to really establish the critical external partnerships and allow for diverse institution types to be able to contribute to their innovation ecosystems longer term. And thus ultimately be able to effectively engage with the NSF Engines program or other programs like that in ways that they may not be able to do today simply because they don't have the resources and they don't have the capacity to be able to do this. And so we really view the EPIIC program, as I think you'll hear Geoffrey and Becky and Korie describe in just a little bit, as an opportunity for us to be able to engage with you all, especially MSIs, PUIs, two-year institutions with that limited research capacity that I was talking about earlier, to engage with you all to help you be able to build and become effective at building those equitable partnerships, become equitable partners, if you will, with teams that are either competing under the current or subsequent NSF Engines program funding opportunities. We've just finished one round and hopeful to be able to talk about another round here in the not too distant future, or other such funding opportunities that really are building out inclusive innovation ecosystems in different parts of the country. I will say that for us, a key aspect of this program that's pretty unique is the fact that we are trying to make available to you all through the program a series of workshops where we hope you will have the ability to work closely with mentor institutions, mentor organizations, and others to really help ideate on project ideas and to also engage with grant writing experts, right? So that you can draft your proposals for what you would undertake as far as the capacity building and the partnership building that I described earlier that could benefit and allow diverse institutions such as yours to be able to engage with the engines or to be able to engage with other types of innovation ecosystems as well. We've run this program previously, as I think some of you know, and I think we've received some positive feedback from the community about how these efforts, particularly the workshops, have been helpful in terms of being able to build up that expertise and really write the proposals that can end up really catalyzing that capacity building within your institutions to build out those partnerships going forward. With that, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge everybody who I think has been critical in making this happen. And you see three of those key folks on this call today. We wouldn't have programs like EPIIC. Frankly, we wouldn't have programs like Engines or anything else that we do, but for the expertise that we have from some of our folks on the program team here who design and implement these efforts with their own thought leadership as well. So my thanks to Geoffrey, my thanks to Becky, and my thanks to Korie for making this possible in the first place. And my thanks to all of you for your willingness to be able to engage with us and your willingness to really see this as a potential opportunity. Again, we can have that thought leadership to design the programs, but we need you all to come to us and say that, hey, these are opportunities that actually have impact, or give us the feedback along the way as well, by the way, of things that we could do differently to make this even more meaningful and even more impactful for you all going forward as well. We definitely very much encourage that feedback too. So with that, I'll pause and hand things back over to Geoffrey and Becky and Korie. But again, thank you all very much. Really looking forward to seeing your engagement in EPIIC and your proposals, and hopefully the impact that will drive for your institutions and the innovation ecosystems around your institutions going forward.
Thank you very much, Erwin. That was terrific. Before we dive in, I want to remind or tell everybody that you can drop questions in the Q&A, and depending on how much time we have at the end, we should have time to answer some of the questions. We'll try to get the ones that are sort of most universal before we dig into the low-level details. Let me share my screen here. Becky, are you sharing already? Are you sharing a screen yet?
I am. I just shared. I don't have to if you've got it open.
No, it's absolutely terrific. So every program at NSF is associated with a solicitation number. And here you see the title of this program, Enabling Partnerships to Increase Innovation Capacity, but you can always find the webpage by doing a search on EPIIC, EPIIC at NSF. I mean, those two things together, the actual solicitation number is 23-625. So next slide, please. So I want to welcome you. This is a very interesting program. Those groups that have participated in the past, those institutions that have participated in the past, if you talk to any of them, they can tell you it's a very interactive program. It's not just solicitation. You send in a proposal, you get reviewed, and you either get money or don't get money. The EPIIC program is designed to help institutions that haven't had a track record of getting funding from NSF to really be able to ramp up and get the help they need to participate in the EPIIC program. Here we have pictures of Becky and me. Unfortunately, I don't have one of Korie. Korie is an important player in all this. You can see her online. Next slide, Becky. So what is this all about? Well, we're trying overall in the TIP Directorate to broaden participation in innovation ecosystems. TIP is taking care of that piece of the puzzle that goes beyond just curiosity-driven research and looking at ways to push those innovations out into the communities. And in particular, we're taking an approach of market pull, so pull from the communities. We're trying to broaden participation, particularly in emerging technologies. This is just a short list of potential topic areas, but there really aren't. It's not meant to be inclusive. So advanced manufacturing, advanced wireless, advanced intelligence, and so forth. And the way that EPIIC does this is to help institutions of higher education with the capacity building that they need to do this. And the goal ultimately is for institutions that are participating in the EPIIC program to be able to create partnerships with external organizations. Those might be companies, those might be other institutions like yourselves, they might be R1, but the idea is to form partnerships. Now, before I go on to the next slide, I want to say one of the things that we thought a lot about in forming this program was this capacity thing and building issue. We started out, Becky hosted a whole series of working groups with various people from various types of institutions, tribal colleges, HBCUs, MSIs, PUIs, and so forth. Listening sessions, that was the phrase I was looking for. And before we started the regional innovation engines program, one thing we heard from a lot of those institutions was, yeah, the RIE program sounds great, but we haven't really got the resources to participate in it fully. We're used to institutions coming to us and saying, we want you to be our partner, and here are the ground rules, and they weren't really equitable partners. So we launched EPIIC and created the EPIIC program to provide that opportunity. But as you might imagine, one of the issues is it's a bit of a chicken or egg problem. If you're asking institutions to put together grant proposals in order to get money to be able to put together grant proposals, there's a circularity there. So we designed the EPIIC program with that in mind. As you'll hear as we go along, there's a lot of support offered in the program prior to any kind of proposal submission. Becky, next slide, please. So there are two major goals here. We want our awardees, the awardees for the NSF EPIIC programs, to be able to create partnerships with external organizations to grow programs in workforce development, research and development, and translation of research to practice in emerging technology fields. And equally important, and really the purpose of the program is to develop the capacity and institutional knowledge needed to build new partnerships and secure future external funding to support ongoing efforts in emerging technology fields and regional innovation ecosystems. So as we go along, we'll talk a little bit more about what capacity means and what institutional knowledge means. But what we're hoping for in this program is to provide long-lasting support. That is that by providing some initial seed funding, which is not insubstantial, that your institutions will then have the resources and the structures they need to go forward and perhaps bring in money other ways to support capacity efforts. Next slide, Becky. So a couple things that EPIIC isn't really about. As I said, it's about capacity and institutional resources. So it's not really about faculty development. That doesn't mean there can't be any faculty development, but it should be aimed at this whole notion of going out and building external partnerships. So if you need to teach your faculty how to write proposals, that might be one thing, but just general faculty development isn't something it's about. It's not about curriculum development. That's not to say it's not about workforce development, but it's not aimed at providing funding to develop curriculum. It's not aimed at providing funding for research. It's aimed at providing you the wherewithal to go and seek that funding. And this is important. It's not for meeting the needs of individual departments. Whatever you propose to EPIIC, it should serve institutional needs. It should be in pursuit of institutional strategic goals. And to keep that in mind, it's something that's what that requires is if you're going to submit a preliminary proposal to EPIIC and then later a proposal, is that you work with the leadership of your institution to understand what those strategic goals are and to align what it is you want to do with those strategic goals to provide institutional level resources and support. Next slide, please.
I just want to interrupt for a second. So faculty development is what we mean to say on that slide. Just
Oh, it says
addressing it.
facility.
It says facility development, so we do mean faculty development. Apologies.
But facility development as well. We're not interested in labs, for example. Okay, next slide. So how's it structured? Well, the number here is a little daunting. It says 15 awards, but what that is 15 collaborative awards. We really expect to be able to fund with each iteration of this program. This is the third iteration that this webinar is aiming to provide you information about. We aim to support 50 institutions. So each collaborative proposal would have 3 or 4 institutions typically. And within that collaboration, each of the institutions could have their own budget for up to $400,000. $400,000 is the hard limit. And for those of you who've done budgets with federal government before know that it's pretty hard to hit it to the dime. So, but the goal is to provide each institution their own budget in the context of this collaborative award. And who can submit? Well, institutions of higher education are eligible to apply for funding on the solicitation, but not R1 or R2 institutions, using the Carnegie classification of institutions of higher education. Why not R1 and R2? Because R1 and R2 are already high research institutions by definition, and therefore they already have capacity to go after federal funding for research. They're not really the target audience for this, which is trying to help schools that have not reached that level, that are trying to increase their ability to participate in partnerships. We're very interested in funding minorities serving institutions, predominantly undergraduate institutions, 2-year institutions, including community colleges and technical schools that are not classified as R1 or R2 institutions. If you're unclear about the status of your institution, you can reach out to us, to Becky, to Korie, or I, to clarify whether your institution is actually allowed to submit a proposal under this solicitation. Next slide. So again, the emphasis of the solicitation is to enable institutions with limited or no research capacity to create partnerships with external organizations to grow programs in workforce development, research and development, and or translation of research to practice in emerging technology fields. So I want to again emphasize that it is to enable institutions to be in a position to go after those kinds of things. It's not to fund those individual efforts. Next slide, Becky. So who can be a PI, a principal investigator? That is the person who would ultimately be submitting an initial preliminary proposal and finally the PI on the full proposal. Must be a full-time administrative or faculty position in the proposing institution. So no adjuncts, no part-time faculty or administrators. Temporary hires are not eligible to serve as PIs. The preliminary proposal, which we'll talk about more, has to come from a single individual and cannot have co-PIs or collaborators. However, the principal investigator is expected to collaborate with up to 2 additional individuals in their institution. Whoops. And represent the institution at EPIIC workshops. And so we're going to talk a lot about this EPIIC workshops. By submitting a preliminary proposal, you are saying that our team is prepared to participate in these workshops if the preliminary proposal is selected. Next slide, Becky. So preliminary proposal date, the preliminary proposals due by 5 p.m. in your local time on June 27th, 2024. And then after, and the preliminary proposals will be evaluated. Subset of the schools or the institutions submitting preliminary proposals will be invited to the workshops. And at the workshops, these institutions will form collaborations. And ultimately, the full proposal, which comes from these collaborations, will be due January 21st, 2025. So the funding process, phase one, you have to put together a preliminary proposal. Becky's going to talk a lot more about this, but I should say the preliminary proposal is a fairly small step. It only involves a small number of pages. It's as she'll tell you, it involves identifying strategic goals in your institution, telling us something about your institution, and telling us something about the team members who would be participating. Submission of a preliminary proposal is considered by us an indication of the availability of everyone on the team to attend and participate in EPIIC workshop events. And the dates for those workshop events are in the solicitation, so you can see exactly what you're committing to before you submit a preliminary proposal. Then the second phase is, if you're invited to attend, you will attend a sequence of workshops. There'll be a series of virtual workshops, each a couple hours, and then there will be a multi-day, a 3-day in-person workshop in Atlanta in next fall, in which you will be given a lot of assistance in putting together a competitive proposal. Then out of those workshops, you'll be forming teams, we call them cohorts, and Becky will talk about that some more. And those full proposals will come from the cohorts that are formed in the EPIIC workshops and who are invited to submit a full proposal. You do actually have to be invited to submit a full proposal coming out of the workshops. But really what that means is that you participate fully in the workshops, and that you coming out of the workshops is clear that you have a direction that makes sense for that EPIIC program. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Becky at this point.
Okay, thank you, Geoffrey. So the overall sort of timeline, if you were to submit a proposal, the preliminary proposals would be due June 7th. You'll be invited to attend workshops sometime between June 27th and the start of those workshops. We're going to talk about them, but they span between September 10th and October 10th. Coming out of that, you would be invited to submit full proposals, and full proposals are due January 21st. I will say, I'm going to spend some time now talking about what the process is like and what the expectations are. And I am watching the chat here, and a lot of the questions initially coming in are about eligibility, and can R1 and R2 institutions partner with the smaller institutions that are eligible for this. And we're going to get to the heart of that as I kind of talk through this structure. I will say up front that we absolutely want R1 and R2 institutions to partner with these small schools, but the participation or partnership of those larger institutions on an EPIIC proposal is not a part of this program, right? And you'll see why as we kind of talk through what we're trying to accomplish here with EPIIC. So just please hold on and bear with me as we work our way through this. So we've talked already a little bit. We've mentioned this word cohort. We're using the word cohort to refer to teams that actually form during the workshops, right? So all of you out there that are a non-1 or non-R1, non-R2 institution that puts forward a preliminary proposal and then is invited to attend a workshop, you're going to be interacting with everyone else who's invited. And over the course of those workshops, you're going to form cohorts, right? And then those cohorts are going to be ideating and putting together the full proposal. Right. The reason why we require these cohorts is really to build community and help you all sort of have additional support in the proposal writing process. And then as you go through the life of the award, you have sort of a cohort or community to work with, to rely on, to share resources with. I will say this idea of a cohort and sort of collaborating on a full proposal for EPIIC looks very different than what you may envision if you're familiar with sort of a traditional collaborative proposal at NSF. And I'm happy to talk about that a little bit more as we kind of explain the structure of the program. But first, I want to emphasize the preliminary proposal first, right? That's the first thing that's coming up, and it's due in end of June, right? Again, I point you to the solicitation because it lays out exactly what you want to put together. Again, the preliminary proposal really is not kind of a shorter version of a fully fleshed out project idea. In fact, we have a series of prompts, and we just really want you to address those prompts. So what should be in your preliminary proposal? That proposal should reflect your institutional priorities, particularly around forming partnerships, right? It should try to align the priorities of your institution with the priorities and goals of the EPIIC program. So EPIIC wants to enable smaller universities to have to grow their institutional capacity, to establish, equitable, sustainable, long-term partnerships with whoever is important for your institution to connect with, whether that's industry partners or R1s and R2s, but to build up your own resources so that you can enter those partnerships in a way that it benefits your institution and is likely to be sustained beyond just a single project, right? It's not intended to provide any kind of this preliminary proposal. You do not have to include in it some sort of detailed project, nor do you have to identify the partners that you ultimately want to partner with, right? So you don't need to know right now who that industry partner is or who that R1 partner is. It's great if you do, but that's not what this project or this program is trying to do, right? It's not used to say, give you money so that you can partner with an R2 or R1 on a specific project or set of activities. Something I do want to note here, because we've now done we're kind of in the middle of our second funding cycle, so we're getting a lot of feedback from our teams and learning a lot and hopefully improving this program as we go. So one thing I do want to highlight here is you should go into that preliminary proposal recognizing that if you are invited to continue on in the program, you're going to be working with a lot of folks that have deep expertise in building this type of capacity at your universities. And so we are asking everybody to come into those workshops being willing to kind of maybe let go a little bit of the project ideas that you put in your preliminary proposal, because what you'll see is if you kind of keep an open mind, that project is going to evolve sometimes very significantly between the preliminary proposal and when you put together that that full proposal. I think the folks that have been through this would say that those projects evolved in a good way, right? They've got better potential to really have a sustainable impact at your institutions. But it's not like a typical program where we expect a really tight correlation between sort of what you've put into your preliminary proposal and what ends up in your full proposal. We also ask, because we want this to be an institutional effort, we do ask you to reach out to your leadership, right? Geoffrey mentioned earlier that we want to have an administrator on this project. We use that term very loosely. We don't define who in your institution is the right administrator, because we know all of your universities are very different, your structures are different, the workloads are different. But regardless of who you bring in, it's a good idea to try to reach out to senior leadership at your university to put this on their radar, see how they feel about it, try to get their buy-in early on in your organization participating in this program. So the preliminary proposal itself, we try to keep it as minimal as possible. So you're required to do a project summary, limited to 1 page. And we ask you to list the 3 people who you've identified at your institution that is going to be engaged in this project. One of them has to be an administrator, like I just mentioned. Those people can evolve over time as well, but do your best to find 3 people at the outset that you think have the right expertise and position within the institution to do this work. And then you're required in that 1 page to have a short section about the intellectual merit, which is really just to sort of highlight the ways you think your institution can contribute best practices around capacity building that may be able to be adopted by other institutions. And then a broader impact section. There's a lot of ways you can approach broader impacts. We provide a suggestion right in the solicitation about, participation in EPIIC and receiving EPIIC funding as a small institution yourself enables, fuller participation of MSIs, PUIs in 2 years in the regional innovation ecosystems. And then, so that's a single page with just sort of high level information. And then you have up to 3 pages to provide your project description. And again, we've kind of laid out what we would like to hear from you. So we've got basically 2 prompts. We ask you to describe your institution's challenges and opportunities related to sustainable partnerships. And you can think about those partnerships through various lenses. So if your institution is really looking to build your research capacity, maybe you're thinking about partnerships to help grow that, right? Maybe you're interested in really moving into the translation space, right? Getting into entrepreneurship and commercializing some of the work happening at your institutions. Maybe it's around workforce. Right? Maybe you're a small school that doesn't do research, but your mission is really about developing the future workforce. And so you're aligning your efforts with your institution's goals around workforce. And again, we are looking to fit this loosely into, the future science and emerging tech fields. So we're asking you to identify some of those things and then describe how your institution might use EPIIC funds to address your institutional needs for capacity, right? So might is sort of the indicator there that these are loose ideas. We're not looking for fully fleshed out project ideas. We want to see up to 3 folks and a little bit of information about why those folks were selected. And then again, you're going to have to give us a paragraph or so on broader impacts. And then we have some specific asks around the descriptive statistics of your institution, really trying to get a sense of the size of your institution. And then you'll submit that. I think on my next slide, I indicate, right, we don't ask for a budget. You do have to do your biographical sketches and current and pending support. We don't ask for any additional appendices or supplementary documents, right? You submit that. Submission of that proposal is an indication to us that you will make those 3 people available for these workshops, and all the dates are posted in the solicitation. Typically, there's not a ton of time between when you get informed about your proposal being submitted, or your preliminary proposal being accepted, and the start of the workshops. So it really is important to sort of plan to try to block out those times. The virtual workshops are typically afternoon sessions, and then there's a, all like 3-day in-person session. Okay, so then if you get selected to participate in these workshops, we've kind of already talked about this a little bit, but you'll be working collaboratively. So you'll start off kind of just sharing with each other, what your challenges are, what your opportunities are, looking for places where there's similarities, differences. And those are the things that are going to form the basis of how you choose to form cohorts. That's an organic process. Can be a little stressful for teams, but the feedback we're getting is that people tend to learn a lot and grow quite a bit from the experience. So in the end, it's overall a positive thing. Specific outcomes for the workshops are really to help identify those challenges that you'd like to address to help you grow external partnerships, figure out what some actionable solutions to those challenges may be, and then to form these cohorts where you can work together to actually implement some of these solutions. These are the dates for the next round of workshops. So you can see there's a series of virtual sessions. These typically are afternoon, so you want to try to block out as much of your afternoon as possible. I recognize that your institutions, you've got heavy teaching loads, you all wear a lot of hats. So it's not easy to do this, but hopefully with enough advance notice, you can try to create some room in your calendar. And then the other thing to note is that for that in-person workshop, which will be in Atlanta in October, travel, accommodations, meals, all of that is covered by NSF. So any incidental costs you'd have to cover, but everything else you don't have to worry about. I should say when you're at the workshops, you'll be working with experts who have a lot of knowledge about building capacity in these areas, and you'll also be working with grant development specialists. You'll have your own consultant that helps you develop your proposal. So cohorts get invited to submit collaborative proposals. You have, in this case, I'm not sure how many weeks you have. You have to look at the solicitation, but you have fair amount of time to put the full proposal together, and then those full proposals will go through the normal merit review process at NSF. I'm not going to go through this piece in detail because it's way down the road, but the solicitation also outlines everything that would go into the full proposal. One of the things that I do want to highlight here, so this is the project description. Right, this is a full proposal, so many more pages than the preliminary proposal. But one of the things you'll notice is the structure of this, right? So imagine you're participating in the workshops and your university decides to join in a cohort that is made up of 4 schools, right? Maybe it's a couple of community colleges, maybe there's an HBCU involved, maybe there's a tribal college or a Hispanic serving institution or a PUI, right? So 4 of you come together to submit a full proposal. Each institution has their own section of the proposal, right? So if you look at C here, individual institution plans for building institutional regional innovation partnerships, right? So you'll each get your own section where you get to lay out, this is what our institution needs and what we want to accomplish, and this is how we're going to do it. And then there'll be a section in the proposal that talks about, how are you going to leverage each other as a cohort to help you all meet your own individual goals, right? So this is a very different collaborative proposal than a more standard NSF collaborative proposal, where if you've got a couple of universities working together, there's a single set of objectives to the project and everybody's contributing, right? you can kind of think of like little mini projects for each institution that are independent from each other, right? So it is structured differently there. And then just to wrap up here, whenever you're doing something in filling out a proposal for NSF, you always want to go to our proposal and award policies and procedures guide. It's a massive document, but it's going to have all of the details about how to submit something. We've tried to lower that barrier for the preliminary proposals as much as possible. Your first step can certainly be reaching out to me, Geoffrey, or Korie with questions. And then as you submit, you have to submit through research.gov. They also have a help desk if you've got additional questions on sort of the logistics of entering it into their system. And I'm going to end before we move to Q&A with just an announcement that we're going to follow up this webinar with a Q&A webinar on May 1st at 2. So if you think you're interested in EPIIC, I would recommend that you spend a little time flipping through the solicitation and then bring questions that you have to this Q&A webinar on May 1st. We're not going to have a lengthy presentation. We'll just try to jump right into the questions and address anything that we can't get addressed here today. I see plenty of things coming into the Q&A now, and any other questions that you may have between now and May 1st. And so I think with that, I think that's all we have. Yep, so that's the end of the presentation. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.